guys, Tamashii here. Today I'm going to be taking a look at something many of you may remember, the rivalry between Pokemon and Digimon. So the two franchises are pretty similar, they're also pretty different, so not here to say which one is better than the other. They're not similar enough to justify that kind of a comparison. Instead, I'm going to be taking a look at each franchise's strengths and weaknesses to try to determine what made one more popular than the other, at least in North America.
It's been nearly a decade since Digimon was on the air though, so for the uninitiated, Digimon was an anime that debuted in 1999 on Fox Kids, and has long been regarded as Pokemon's incompetent rival. It was at least as good a show as Pokemon. I remember watching it with my classmates and liking it. I had the toys and the trading cards. After a while though, people just stopped talking about it. It sort of died off in popularity, mostly due to Pokemon also facing its own backlash, and then no one ever talked about it again. However, as Pokemon has bounced back as a franchise and continues to thrive, though maybe not at the level of cultural relevance as it once did, Digimon did not. This of course is debatable, but if we go by how much money each franchise has made, Pokemon would probably be the winner of this popularity contest. Digimon has always sort of carried the title of Pokemon wannabe, even though they debuted not too long apart in America, and aside from having monsters, had very few similarities as far as the actual content of the shows and various games. Pokémon, as we all know, started in Japan in 1986 as a set of 2 Game Boy games. Digimon, on the other hand, started in Japan in 1997 as a Tamagotchi-like digital pet game. The Digimon could battle each other, but aside from that aspect there wasn't very much to compare about the Pokémon Game Boy games and the Digimon V-Pet games. If anything, a more plausible argument would be that Digimon ripped off Tamagotchi, but that's another story. By the time the shows came out here though, Digimon was marketed as being just like Pokémon, with its own trading card game, line of toys, and everything. Even though Agumon probably filled the mascot role better, instead it was Patamon's face on everything, because he looked more like Pikachu. And in the theme song, they made references to digital champions, in spite of this never amounting to anything in the show aside from a level that the Digimon themselves could digivolve to, probably in order to create a Digimon equivalent to Pokemon Masters. The show was recut for American television to make Tai out to be the main character, even when he wasn't any more important in the Japanese version than the other kids, in order to create one solid, recognizable protagonist to compete with Ash Ketchum. Digimon definitely tried to ride on the established success of Pokemon here in America, coming out just a year after Pokemon and being thrown headfirst into Pokemania. But when you get into the meat of the shows, they really have very little to do with one another. Digimon had an actual plot with a conflict and resolution, while Pokemon is more about overcoming small obstacles on the road to achieving the very vague title of Pokemon Master. In Digimon, the monsters could actually say things besides their own names, and Digi-evolution wasn't permanent, it just happened if their fights went on long enough to allow it, sort of like a Sentai series. They turned into the fighting Digimon, and when the battle was over they went back to being the weaker, undigivolved stages. The Digiworld was an entirely separate established dimension from our own, pulling the human characters from reality into its realm to solve their conflicts. Pokemon is never clear about where the Pokemon world really is in relation to the world that we live in. If it's some sort of alternate dimension, it's never explained, but it's not really necessary information to enjoy the show either. The thing to note though is that in Pokemon, the humans and Pokemon coexist in a single realm, allowing the Pokemon to be a part of the humans' everyday lives. Probably the biggest difference though, aside from having an actual plot, was the big cast of developed characters Digimon had to offer. Tai was Digimon's Ash Ketchum, and maybe Matt was the Gary Oak. But there was TK, Joe, Izzy, Sora, Mimi, and eventually Kari, too. That was, in my opinion, Digimon's best feature. I loved the way the characters worked off each other, and the fact that they had some variety. Rather than introducing a random Pokemon trainer of the day in every episode like Pokemon did, all they had to do was follow a different character around to keep it interesting. Speaking of things Digimon did well, the fact that it took itself a little more seriously definitely helped. Rather than the lather, rinse, repeat formula Pokemon fell into as the show went on, Digimon followed a concise narrative the entire way through, and though there were filler episodes, they didn't make up the bulk of the show. After the first season, rather than keeping the show cyclical and tired as Pokemon did, they retired the first cast of kids and brought in a new one. Though the way Digimon was formatted didn't allow for the story to be continued, they managed to carry on by making each season its unique series. This is something I wish Pokemon did. Rather than relying on Ash to be their beleaguered cash cow for all eternity and never grow as a character. That sort of thing is really common with a lot of Sentai series in Japan, and the fact that Power Rangers continues to make the formula work after 20 years of airing proves that it can be profitable too. So why then, if Digimon did a lot of things better than Pokemon, did it fail and fade away like it did in the US? Well, I think the fact that it was on Fox Kids definitely didn't help any. Pokémon was on the WB, in a lineup that consisted of Batman, the Animaniacs, Men in Black, Freakazoid, and much more. Fox Kids had The Magician, Beast Machines, Spy Dogs. Remember any of those shows? Probably not, they sucked. Remember, this was before the internet became a part of daily life. It's not like kids could just watch Digimon online anytime they wanted. I know I didn't know showtimes as a kid, and my parents didn't really either. I just watched what was on, and I sure wasn't going to sit through an hour of crap for one good show in an awful afternoon block. I saw maybe 2 episodes of Digimon in its first run, and one of them was because my dad recorded a VHS of it for me. Digimon was doomed from the start no matter how good it was, simply because it was on such an awful channel. Probably another reason the show didn't do as well is because it really didn't have a popular game as part of its franchise. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure the Digimon games for PlayStation were good, but they were a lot more complicated than Pokémon and they weren't portable. They weren't exactly for most casual kid gamers. This probably didn't help the franchise compete with Pokémon, an already established and well-loved show and game series. Handhelds represent accessibility and practicality. They are the perfect platform to introduce new generations of kids to video games. A console, on the other hand, is more of an investment of time and money, and not likely to suck in new gamers as well. Pokémon really did convert many non-gamers into gamers, simply for this reason. Lastly though, I think the true reason for Pokémon's success over Digimon was the way it was marketed. Pokémon really tied everything in together, the toys, the games, the show, all with the theme of becoming a Pokémon master. You had to catch them all to be the best. We all live in a Pokémon world, and you can be a Pokémon master. Just bug your parents to buy you all the Pokémon stuff you can find. If you watched the show and played the game, you could pick up tips for how to play better. If you had the toys and the trading cards, you could play pretend with your friends in battle and trade a whole new way. It created a universe kids could live in and explore together in both the games and reality, and nothing seemed particularly gender-based aside from the name of the console the games are on. Granted, they would throw a lot of Jigglypuff on things that were supposed to be for girls, but at least there were plenty of things girls could enjoy about Pokémon too. Digimon, well, their entities were kept pretty separate. I never played the game, so I don't know if it's anything like the show, but at first glance they seem pretty different. You don't see the Digidestined from the show at all. The mechanics and the gameplay aren't something you can improve on by watching the show more. The toys, well, they were marketed as action figures would be at the time, but that made them seem like they were exclusively for boys. This is pretty strange to me, because there are twice as many female protagonists in Digimon as there were in Pokémon, and yet the marketing remained focused only on boys. I think that may have been alienating to some kids. It also seemed odd to me that all they ever sold were toys of the monsters, not the kids. It seemed like the Digidestined were the real focus of the show, not the Digimon. The monsters themselves were not collectible in the show. They all had unique personalities and roles within the Digimon world. Some were heroes and some were villains. It's not exactly like collecting them all was a theme in Digimon, and that probably hurt its merchandise sales. Ultimately, that is the biggest defining difference between the two franchises. Pokémon is supposed to consume your life. You can live in the Pokémon world every day because in the Pokémon universe, people and Pokémon coexist. In the Digimon universe, people and Digimon live separately, so it's not as easy to get sucked into its universe. You, ordinary kid, can become a Pokémon master, but only the chosen ones can be the Digidestined, and I don't see you getting sucked into your Digivice. While Digimon maybe had a better way of continuing on its story and building its characters and a more involved plot, the marketing, the universe, and the unfortunate fate of ending up on Fox Kids held it back from rising to the potential of Pokémon.
Though there are a lot of things I wish Pokémon did more similarly to Digimon, in the end I think the better marketing won. Which show did you like better? Leave me a comment and let me know. Thanks for watching, and stick around for more Pokémon videos. See ya!